Welcome to part 13 of this Biplane Blender tutorial series where we're creating this Boeing-Stearman Model 75. If you haven't seen the tutorial playlist, you can check it out with the links in the description. So in this part, we're going to be doing all of the materials for the cockpit and the instruments inside the cockpit. Before we start this part, I wanted to let you know about my furniture and home asset pack for Blender. In this furniture and home 3D model asset pack, you will get 250 furniture and home Blender 3D models, pre-set up for Blender's asset browser and ready to add to your projects. Quickly fill in your 3D scenes just by dragging the models from the asset browser into your 3D scenes. The models have been split up into 5 different categories in the asset browser. The categories include office assets, living room assets, kitchen assets, dining room assets, and a combined bedroom and bathroom assets. There's also a free demo available that you can try out before purchasing. Check out the product with the links in the description, and you can also find the full product video with the link in the description. So what we're going to do is hold down the control key and we're going to click here on the back cockpit just so that we can see the back cockpit. So click on the eye there with the control key. So we're going to add all the materials to these objects. And then after we create the materials for the back cockpit, we're just going to duplicate the objects and replace them for the front cockpit. So let's go to the shading workspace and I'll go into the rendered viewport mode. Let's first make the pipes. So we're going to select this frame here. We'll click on new and we're going to call this cockpit frame. So for this, we're going to make the base color kind of a mid gray color. And we're also going to turn the metallic value all the way up to 1. So that's it for the basic material. So let's just hide this object. Let's also select these pipes here and we can type in frame and add the cockpit frame and just hide those pipes. Let's also select these pieces right here and we're going to add the cockpit frame to that as well. So add the cockpit frame and we can hide the pedal pieces. Also, we'll select the individual pedals here and we're also going to search for frame and add the cockpit frame and just hide that. Now we're going to select the panels here. Let's click on new and I'm going to rename this to cockpit black. And for this, I will just take the base color and make it fully black and I'll turn the roughness to like a 0.4 so I can hide that object. Let's also select the buttons here and we're going to add the cockpit black and then we can just hide all those buttons and the bolts. We're also going to add the cockpit black to this here, so you can just drag and drop the material and drop it here onto that object, hide that object, and put it onto this object and hide that piece. And we're also going to stick it here onto the levers, so drag and drop it onto both of those levers. Now if we go into edit mode of the levers, we're going to zoom in and we're going to deselect everything and then we're just going to select this smaller circle here. We're going to add a new material in the material slot. Let's click on new and I'm just going to make this a very bright red color and I'm going to call this cockpit red. So cockpit red, and then we'll click on the assign button. So now we can just hide those objects. Let's go down here to the stick. And we're going to start by adding the frame, so add the cockpit frame. We'll go into edit mode and we're just going to select this top piece right here. We'll add a new material in the material slot and we're going to search for the smooth rubber material and then click on assign. So there's that rubber grip. Then we're going to go into edit mode and we're just going to select the button. We're going to add a new material in the material slot. We're going to add the cockpit red material and then assign that. So we have that red button. So we'll hide that object. Let's go down here and we're again going to search for frame and add the cockpit frame. Now there's one object that has disappeared, it's not there, so we need to make sure it's in the right collection. If I hit Alt-H to unhide everything, you can see it's not there. So let's just search for this piece. So if I go to the outliner and open up the body collection, here it is, it's the back stick rotation joint. That is what we called this. So you might need to just search for it. If you go here to the search and just search for back stick rotation joint, you can just search for it there. But what I'm going to do is click on it and I'm going to move it and we're going to move it here into the back cockpit. So there it is. So now I can just minimize all of these and we just want to see the back cockpit collection. So now for this object, we just want to make sure we search for frame and add the cockpit frame. So we can go into the rendered view and we now have the frame on that object. So let's now just hide all the objects again that we added a material to. So just select the objects and hide them. So let's now add the material to the seat. So for the seat, I'm going to be using my procedural black leather material, and so I made a tutorial on how to create that. So if you want to check out the tutorial, link to that is in the description, or if you want to purchase that procedural material and help support the channel, you can purchase it with the links in the description on my Gumroad store or my Patreon page. Also, if you have my Ultimate Blender procedural material pack, the black leather material is in my Ultimate material pack. Or if you purchase the resource pack with all the textures, you'll also get this material. So to add in the material, I'm going to go to File, and I'll click on Append. And I'll just locate to the folder with the black leather material. I'll go into the Blender file. Let's go into the material, and then just click on the black leather and click on Append. So now if we just open up the side panel and click on the drop down, we can type in black, and let's add the black leather material. And already it looks pretty nice on default. Although I might want to turn the scale up, so let's turn the scale to like a 1.5 so it's a bit smaller. Now I want to hit tab to go into the node group, and inside the node group I want to add like some little seams or stripes which are going down, and we're going to put that into the normal. So to create this, we're going to search for a wave texture inside the node group. Let's hit Control T, and we're going to use the object coordinates, and we'll preview the wave texture. And I'm actually going to leave all the settings at the default because they work really well at the default. So I now want to search for a color ramp to adjust the colors, so I'll put this after the wave, and I can drag the black tab over and then drag the white tab over. And if we control click right here to add another black tab, we can drag this over. So now you can see we're getting these little stripes. And so we're going to add this to look like little seams in the fabric. So now we're going to search for a bump node. We'll drop the bump node right here, and the color ramp color can go into the height value. And then this bump normal, let's just drag it down here. We'll drag these back. And what we want to do is put this bump normal into the normal there. And so now this extra bump is going into the height value. So now the normal can go into the normal of the shader. And let's go out of the node group and just Control Shift select the shader to preview it. So now if I zoom in here, you can kind of see there's a bump. Let's go back into the black leather material. And I'm first going to invert it. So invert that bump so it's going back in. And then let's turn the bump strength down to like a 0.3 so it's not quite as bumpy. So let's just zoom out here. We're going to box select these nodes, add them into a frame, add a label, and I'm just going to call this wave. So let's go out of the node group. So we can now hide the C object because that's finished. Let's now add the material for the metal strap adjusters. So what I'm going to do is hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to select all of the metal strap adjusters. So make sure you select all of these objects. We're now going to add a new material, and then we'll use Control L, and we will link the materials so they all have the same material. And we'll call this material strap adjusters. And let's turn the metallic value all the way to 1. I'll turn the roughness to a 0.35 so it's pretty shiny. And I'm just going to make this a light gray color. And now I can just hide all those objects. Let's now select the nylon strap, and we'll shift select all the other nylon straps. We'll click on new here to add a new material. I can just call this straps, or maybe I'll call it seat straps. And then again, Control L, and we are going to link the materials so they all have the same material. So I'm now going to be adding in a cloth texture, and we'll be putting the cloth texture on the straps. So if you haven't downloaded them yet, you can download the cloth texture with the link in the description. And with the Node Wrangler enabled, we're going to select the principled shader and hit Control Shift T. So I'm going to select the roughness, hold down the Control key, and select the normal GL and the color. So with those three maps selected, we'll click on Principled Texture Setup, and it's going to set it up automatically. So we have the base color, the roughness, and the normal. Now we need to UV unwrap the object, so we'll go into edit mode. We're going to select all the objects at once, and we'll hit U, and we are just going to unwrap angle based. So let's now go over here to the UV editing workspace, and you can see they're all somewhat straight, but they're not fully straight, and I want to make them nice and straight so they look better when looking close up at the texture. So if I select all the UV islands, we're going to hit the N key to open up the side panel, and in the previous part of the tutorial series, we enabled the UV Squares add-on. So if you don't have the UV Squares add-on, then you can download it from the GitHub page. It's a free add-on. Or if you'd like to help support me as well as support the creator, then you can use my affiliate link in the description, and you can purchase the add-on from the Blender Market. So once you install the add-on, you can click on the to grid by shape, and that is going to straighten it out. So let's close the side panel. So now if I look closely at the material, it definitely looks better. So let's scale up the UV island so that the cloth texture is quite a bit smaller. That looks a lot better. So let's go back to the shading workspace, and I can now just play around with the colors a bit. So I want to make the colors a bit darker. So after the base color, I'm going to search for the RGB curves, and we'll put this here between the base color and the principled shader. And I'm going to drag this dot down here. So put a dot in the middle and drag it way down so the straps are kind of like a dark gray. So we can now just hide these objects. So now we need to do the materials here for the panel. So we'll select the panel, and on the drop down, we're going to search for black, and we're going to add the cockpit black material that we already created, and then we can hide that object. So I now want to select this object here. Let's add a new material, and I'm going to call this material instruments. So now what I want to do is add in that free texture that I downloaded from Pixabay. So again, link is in the video description. Now what I'm going to do is open up that Pixabay texture in Krita, and I'm going to make the background fully black. So let's open up the texture in Krita. Now, if you've purchased the tutorial project files or the resource pack, then you'll already get the edited texture with the dark background. So here I am in Krita. You could also do the same thing in like GIMP or Photoshop or pretty much any 2D program. We're going to click right here in Krita to go to the selection tool. This is like the wand selection. We're going to click right here. And if you need to change the threshold, you can go to the tool options. So find the tool options and you can change the threshold, but that's looking good. So I'm just going to hit delete just to delete that. Let's now go to the layer system, and we're going to click on the plus here to add a new layer. And let's drag and drop this layer down here so it's at the bottom. And then let's hit Control A so that everything is now selected, so we're not just using that smaller selection. So let's click back here to go to the paint, and then let's change the size and make it a lot bigger. And if I right click, I can change the brushes, and I'm just going to change it to this big brush here, so the marker. And I'll make sure the color is fully black, and now I can just go along here and just paint back and forth until everything is fully black. All right, just like that. So now we'll click on File, and we will click on Export. And I'm going to call this instruments black background as just a JPEG image. That's fine. Actually, I might as well change it to a PNG just to make sure it doesn't lose any quality, because a PNG image is lossless. So I'll change it as a PNG image and then save that and click on OK. So we can now close Krita. So back in Blender, let's go to the add menu. We're going to search for an image texture and we'll open the texture. Let's navigate to our project files. We're going to go inside the texture files. Here's all the textures. Let's choose the instruments black background. We can put the color into the base color. And you can see if I go into edit mode, we already applied the mirror modifier, so we don't need to apply that. That's looking great. So let's press Control 1 to go to back view. We'll select everything in edit mode, and we're going to unwrap, and we're just going to project from view. So now let's go over here to the UV editing, and let's zoom into the object, and we can just hit the A key to select the UV editing, and we'll scale it up, and we just need to place each one of these little pieces on the different instruments. So I'm going to start by moving everything over a little bit over here so it's out of the way, and then we'll hit the L key just to select these two pieces here, and we'll hit G to grab, and we're going to drag them over, and we're going to put them over this one right here. Of course, you can look at reference images to see what the airplane cockpit looks like, and you can configure it however you want, but I'm just going to stick that one right there. We can box select the islands here, and let's just drag this piece right here where the airplane is. All right, that is good. Let's deselect everything. Let's just select this one now, and we'll drag this one over here. And this one I'm going to stick right here with the airplane above here. So this one is like a compass. And this one is to kind of have the airplane's rotation. So whether it's rotating more left or right, I don't know what it's called, but it shows if the airplane is straight up and down or if it's cockeyed. And then this also here is the height of the airplane and if it's pointed more up or down. So I'm going to select this one next. Let's move this one over here. This is the one in the center. So I'm going to put this one right here and just kind of scale it if you need to, maybe scale it up a little bit. We will hit L to select that piece, and we'll move this one over. And this one we're going to add to the climb. So this would be like an altitude indicator to indicate how high the airplane is in the sky. Hit the L key to select that piece, and we'll move this one over. And for this one, I can do the airspeed. So airspeed in knots. Now for the last one, I'm just going to drag this up here and scale this one up. I just kind of like this one. I think it looks pretty cool. So I'm just going to add one more right there. And then all of these other little buttons and things, these I want them to be black. So that's why I'm leaving them over there. Now you can see if I zoom in here, you can see it is showing some of the texture on these little pieces, and that's because it's repeating the texture. So let's go back to the shading workspace, and on the repeat here, we want to change it to clip, and that way they're all going to look fully black. Now what I also want to do is add a glass texture in front of all these. So let's go back to the layout and we'll go back to solid view. We'll go into edit mode and I'm going to just hold down the shift key and select all of these faces right here. And I'm going to duplicate them and just move them out slightly. So now what I'm going to do is open up the side panel. Let's add a new material and I'm going to call this Instruments Glass and we'll click on Assign. And then instead of using the principled shader, we're going to find the glass shader. Make sure the color is fully white and make sure the roughness is turned to 0 and we can assign that material. So now if we go into the rendered viewport mode, it will be pretty hard to notice, but if you kind of look here on the very side, you can see now it looks kind of reflective and shiny because there is a layer of glass there. And if you wanted to, you could even turn up the roughness just a little bit to like a 0.2. I think turning up the roughness to a 0.2 looks a little bit better. So it looks a little bit old and maybe there's a little bit of dirt on the glass. So it's a little bit harder to see through the glass. So let's press Alt-H to unhide all the objects again. And there we go. We now have all the materials for the cockpit. Let's go back to solid view. Let's open up the side panel here or open up the outliner. So now what I want to do is just see the front cockpit. So if I hold down the control key and click here, I can just see the front cockpit and we're actually going to select everything and we can just move it into the backup collection just in case we want to get back to it. Let's now hold down the control key and click here so we can see everything. So we're seeing everything now, but we just want to hide the blueprints and the backup. So now we'll click on the back cockpit. We're going to open the back cockpit. Let's scroll way down here and I will click on the bottom object, hold down the shift key and select the top object. So it's going to select all of the cockpit objects. So now we'll hit Shift D to duplicate and drag it forward. And then we'll hit M to move and we're going to move it into the front cockpit, which right now is empty because we moved the objects outside of it. So I'll move it there into the front cockpit. So now if we open up the front cockpit, we have all those extra objects. So now we can go to top view and we can just drag this back here and we can just stick it right there. So just make sure the cockpit just sticks inside that area. All right, so it looks like everything's placed correctly. Although right here, we do have these pipes that we need to move back because the pipes are going too far. So if we select both of these objects, we'll go into edit mode, we'll go into wireframe, we'll go to the vertex select and just select the front here. And then we're just going to drag these back inside the engine, just like that. And then also you can see if I select this pipe here, we have two pipes overlapping, just like before in the previous part of the tutorial series. So here's the extra pipe on the front and this pipe is overlapping the other pipe. So we don't actually need this pipe. So we're just going to delete that pipe. So I'm going to go down into the material preview just to take a look at these materials and make sure everything has the material. And everything's kind of loading up, but that's looking great. So you can see all the materials. Now right over here, this looks white. That is because we're using the material preview, which uses Eevee, and so the glass is looking really white, but all the materials are looking fine. So the last thing that I want to do before I finish this part is close the back cockpit, and you can see all of these duplicated objects need to be renamed. So I'm going to rename all these objects. So instead of calling them back cockpit and then the object, I'm going to call it front cockpit. All right, so I've renamed all the objects. So the back cockpit has the word back at the starting and the front cockpit has the front at the starting. So we'll save the project again. We'll go into the rendered viewport mode and just take a look at this. So in the next part, in part 14, we are going to be hand texture painting some little bolts because on like these little panels and things, there's going to be like some little bolts along here and kind of along here. So in the next part, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be hand painting some texture maps of those bolts. So just save the project again and that'll finish it up for this part. So when the next part is released, I'll have it linked in the video description and it will be right up there on the end screen. So thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next part.